English language teaching. Under the covers.
Our guest today is a multifaceted maestro. He's a Trinity TYLEC tutor, an IELTS and Cambridge examiner, a pre-sessional EAP tutor, and currently an IGCSE History teacher. Not to mention, he's also an ADOS at IH Hanoi and a DOS for SBC Canford Summer 2015 and served as the BC Hanoi Staff Rep from 2016 to 2018 with 15 plus years, actually I think it might be 18 plus years of teaching in 4 different countries. He's got some incredible insights to share with us today. Please welcome to the show, Anthony Hocking. Wonderful to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so Anthony, you've got some insights today, not just about teaching in the classroom, but teaching just as a whole as the industry. Where do you want to start us off?
You know,
go on, Rich.
Sorry, Anthony. If you've got a place to start, but I almost think kind of what you just mentioned before about, you know, being pretty much done with the kind of language center TEFL game, and your reasons for saying that, because obviously you're someone who's committed a large sort of chunk of your career to doing just that, and now you kind of feel like maybe it's coming to the end of that portion.
Yeah, I started off in 2006 straight off my cell phone. I was in Syracuse in Sicily for my first job, and it was a tiny little language school. All we did was the Trinity spoken English exam, so you had classes of a maximum of 8 students once a week for an hour and a half, and then at the end of the year they did Trinity 3, 4, 5, 6. Some of them did 8, 9, and 10 as well. And it was like start at 3:30, finish at 8:30. Worked a couple of weekends every month, and that was about it. It was just me and my boss. That was it. 130 students in the school. That was all she wrote, and that was a really good, I think, entranceway into the market, into the industry, especially in Europe, because Asia's different, and we can get to that at some point. And then, even to the point where he paid. My salary wasn't amazing, but I was a freshly qualified teacher, and you're not expecting big bucks. I was just thankful to have a job. Syracuse was an amazing place to live as a 25-year-old. I had my own flat, in which the school paid €200 towards the rent. So I was only paying €200 a month rent for a very nice flat in a very nice area of the town.
You really landed on your feet.
Yeah, I know, and it's quite funny because I took my wife. My wife is Canadian, who I met in South Korea. I took her to Syracuse last year. First time I've been back since 2007, and first time she'd ever been there. And she was just looking at her, just going, she was, this was your first job abroad. He was like, bloody is. He goes, you got ruined. She goes, the food, the history, the culture, the weather. She goes, the people, the bars. He goes, no wonder you're so cranky.
No, everyone should start out in a hagwon in, the middle of nowhere in South Korea, or, like some sort of happy giraffe chain in China or Vietnam or something like that.
Yeah, I know. So I think so in terms of I've done the small family run school. I've done the medium-sized company. I've done the British Council in different countries. I've done the summer schools, both as a manager, a senior teacher, and a teacher. I've also been in management for IH in Hanoi. So I've seen the language centre, the summer school, from various perspectives. And I think I'm getting to the point where I just think, firstly, I think one of the problems is that there are too many schools. And I think, especially in countries like Spain and Italy, where 20 or 30 years ago, you had that kind of first wave of people going out, or going back to the 80s, who were doing their CELTs, and they were working at places like IH and things like that. And after 10 or 15 years, they, obviously they settle down, they marry locals, and they think, I could run my own school. I could do this better. And then they branch off, and you've got another school on the market. sucking up students, which affects, I think, and these are all just my opinions and my observations. Splits the market, means schools make less money, which affects salaries. And the other thing as well, a lot of these people who then splinter off groups of teachers, individual teachers who then set up their own schools, they do exactly the same as the school they've just left. Let's buy English file. Let's just use the book. Let's do Cambridge exams. There's nothing to differentiate them from any other school. But they think they do something different. And that might be your own personality in the classroom. And I think that's an acceptable view. But if you're just using the same books with the same examination system, what is it you're actually doing differently? And then again, these smaller schools really they promise things like CPD. You go and you look at TEFL.com, they don't do it. Or it's just there, they'll just go, well, this, I'm going to show you how to teach the present perfect. Okay, great. But that's not an hour and a half session. That's not an inductive approach to teaching grammar. That's not task-based teaching. That's not super segmental phonology. This is what teachers need as they go forward in their career. So there's that. And then you've got the big companies, the multinationals, Wall Street, British Council. I've worked for the British Council. On the whole, I think the British Council has a place. I don't think it's perfect. But I think there's lots of positives about it. And I'd say probably one of the most positive teaching experiences I've ever had was the British Council in Hanoi. And we can get back to that because it's going to time with something else I can maybe talk about later on. But again, I think when I say I'm burnt out, or when I'm saying I'm getting to the end of the language centre game, I don't think after this job that I'm currently in, I will ever work in Europe again. I think the salaries in Europe are the shame of the industry. I think it's exploitative. I think it's unprofessional. I think they are more cowboy than they are willing to admit to themselves. And I think they are beholden to Cambridge. And Rich and myself have worked in Asia, especially for places like the British Council, where you have an actual curriculum linked to a syllabus. And here, what's the syllabus? Oh, look, cutting edge, version 4. Look, it's got an extra box that says it's task-based. The students are going to absolutely go nuts for this. Sorry, how much did you pay to the Pearson rep for this? That's it.
Yeah.
Don't sit there and tell me that you're doing anything innovative, because you're not. You don't have syllabuses. You don't have curriculums. You have a pacing guide. Pacing guides are not syllabuses. And secondly, the thing, and again, I'm probably this is almost like a stream of consciousness 18 years in the making. You appoint people to be directors of studies. You say to people, to be a director of studies, you need to have a Delta or a Trinity Dip TEFL. But let's just concentrate on the Delta, because I think this is part of the problem. For Delta Module 3, most people go away and they do Delta Module 3 on exams. I did. You spend weeks and months reading Pomodoro, Dornier, West. You read all the literature from, for example, from Brian North from Equals on negative backwash and the positive forward wash and stuff like this. And then what do? You teach to the test, and you buy books that teach to the test. So why bother doing Delta Module 3? What is it you're doing differently? Nobody is doing anything differently. It's all part of the same sick joke. And it's like teachers, it's like there's the quote from Voltaire. God is a comedian playing to an audience too scared to laugh. That's TEFL.
It could be a lot.
And then they show up at IA TEFL and they show up at IH conferences, the usual names, we all know them, and they slap each other on the back and they go, I've got this new book, or I've got this new approach. Great that people are doing research, but it's not changing anything because it's not affecting the market. And the parents have been programmed to believe that you should start doing starters when your kid is 7 or 8. And then it's really important that they can put the crocodile next to the tree. It's like, it's like the Eddie Izzard sketch when he does this sketch in New York talking about learning French. Le singe est sur la branche. Like, when are you going to use that phrase?
Yeah,
so
it's completely synthetic, and they justify the whole thing just based on this is basic language, and we want to customize your kids to taking exams.
Hey, Rich, remember because it just reminds me, we did a React video where we can't do our React videos. We watch like teaching clips from movies and stuff, and we kind of give we break it down.
Oh, yeah, I've seen them. It's great.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic! We did the SNL one where it's Alec Baldwin as the French teacher, and he's just says "Je voudrais aller à la salle de bain," and it reminded me of that. But the irony that was last week, I was for a business trip. I went to Quebec, and I used the sentence
with the kind of cheesy over the
with
top.
With the cheesy over the top, and they complimented my accent. But so I'm like, I kind of a bit destroyed. But yeah, I mean that sentence is fine, but like when you talk about the syntheticness of like the Eddie Izzard joke and a lot of the materials that are out there, yeah. I'm wondering, you mentioned about teachers starting their own schools and then just doing everything that their previous school did. Do you think that is because they kind of come to the point where they're so used to teaching, like, oh, this is how I'm going to teach, this is the best way to teach, but then they get kind of hit by the reality of this is a business and you've got to make money, and how do you make money? You tell these parents, hey, I've got this way of doing it. All my stuff's task-based learning, and the parents are like, oh, that sounds great, but then the kids come home and they don't have, red circles around all the tasks that they've done in their book, and the parents are like, what's going on here? You don't have a book that you follow. You don't teach to any sort of test or anything like that. What are we paying for? Do you think that is like a conflict between the reality of teaching and that it doesn't always gel with the industrial complex, the educational industrial complex?
No, you're exactly right, and that is the problem. I mean, it's how do you go about deprogramming a market that's been programmed?
Yeah.
To expect certain things, it's very difficult, and when that market is dominated by large companies such as Cambridge, Pearson, Oxford, OUP, the publishing houses who also have a stake in the exams. In Asia, it's IDP as well. So I don't know how you would go about it, and I'm more than happy to accept the fact that maybe the position that I'm coming from is maybe too idealistic. And would it be better to have a system of actual formative continuous assessment where you build up a picture of a student over 9 months or 18 months? Because I mean, I think okay, so for example, Rich, how many hours would you say comfortably it would take to prep a student for the B2 exam?
It depends where they're coming from, doesn't it?
So if
they've already got the level, you mean?
No, they've done B1,
right?
And then that some places would say we can do it in 90 hours. Other places would say you do 2 years, you do 180 hours, and then you do the B2 exam.
You got Rich sweating.
I think I know what Rich is going to say, and I think I'm probably going to agree with him. Would say, well, you would get them to the level first, and then you would prepare them for the exam. You don't put the two together.
Yeah, I mean, I did. I've really turned against exams in total at the moment. I really hate the idea of being having an exam as the aim, and it's interesting. Just to give you an idea of what I'm doing at the moment, Anthony, I'm mainly teaching asylum seekers in England, combination of refugees and asylum seekers, and a couple of other people who are just living and working in the country. And They're going for the sort of community college classes, which
Mostly
are
Welsh,
still
right? I think.
still subsidized by the government, so they're incredibly cheap for the students, and it's all test focused. It's called Skills for Life English. It's some of the most synthetic testing I've ever seen, with the kind of writing tasks that I would struggle to find a native who's ever done some of these things, let alone training students to them. Like, for example, in the kind of more advanced exam, we do like letters of protest to the council and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, I'm sure there are people writing letters of these are handwritten letters of protest. You know, part of the structure is like you write your own address and you write their address in like this letterhead format. It's really bizarre. But that's what we're teaching to. And my kind of attitude now, you know, after being a teacher for so long, is, you know, I don't care if that's the performance metric that I'm going to get measured by. I've been teaching for long enough that I have the confidence that I'm going to teach to benefit the students, and you know, as a secondary concern, will get them passing the exam. But my primary aim in the class is communicative competency, and it's kind of you know, at the very least seeing what the students' needs are and what their wants are, and then customizing a class to them.
Yeah.
I'm kind of lucky that I can kind of get away with that in the place where, because the upside of working with a community college is, you know, they are quite chilled out about stuff, and you know, as long as you don't rock the boat too much, then they'll kind of give you a bit of leeway in what you do.
I mean, I think I don't think, you know, exams are the great Satan. I think there is some cause for some form of assessment, and I kind of like the idea of SAFRA having a, you know, inside the EU you can have French, German, English, Spanish, and you can say, well, my Spanish is this and my English is this, and I think there's, you know, something to be said for that kind of uniformity and the transferability of skills and things like that. So, but at the same time, I just think that, does everything have to be about the exam? You know, can it not just, can we firstly just look at, can we get them to the point of where they can communicate competently, where they can listen, read, and write, where they can use the correct features of phonology in order to achieve a level of comfortable intelligibility, that kind of thing. Can we look at that first before we start saying, well, by the way, this is use of English part 4, and can you take that one word and change that sentence? I mean, is that really the be all and end all? What's more important? You know?
Yeah, they're so weird, those keyword transformations, aren't they?
Yeah. And it's
I could give some to my dad, and he would kind of look at them, you know, confused.
Yeah.
Well, it does seem like just another channel for generating revenue, maybe not for schools, but maybe for institutions that, you know, invigilate and, you know, give out these exams and stuff like that.
It's like the standard model of language centers is actually they're not really that concerned about having the kind of conscientious teacher that you're talking about, are they, Anthony? They just, what they ideally want is they want the fresh off the boat, kind of early 20s, post-CELTA teacher who's going to stick around for 2 or 3 years, do what they're told, and you know, that's all.
You're right. And the irony, I think, or the inherent problem that I think is the ticking time bomb at the heart of TEFL in Western Europe is being caused by Brexit. Because once you've got to the situation where you cannot just, like you said, scoop the teachers fresh off the boat, because now you need visas, now you need work permits. That means you have to invest in those teachers. You have to go through the Byzantium bureaucracy of the Italian system, or the Spanish system, or the Portuguese system, or the French system. It takes time to get a visa processed. You can't hire in June and July anymore. You have to do your hiring now. You have to get it done now. We had teachers turn up late last year because of visa processes. And again, one of the benefits of the model that you have in Asia is it's year-round recruitment for most schools. So if a teacher leaves, someone can just come in. Or like, again, working in Hanoi, when I was ADOS, like, we'd have teachers who were just like on a contract for 2 or 3 hours a week, and they'd be working somewhere else. But if we had if we had 4 teachers phoning sick, we could go, okay, phone so-and-so, they don't think they're working today. But again, I think, like, going back to Brexit, I think you're going to find that these kind of the glamour TEFL destinations, like things like Barcelona, Madrid, Milan, Rome, places like that, they're not going to have the allure anymore, because a lot of the schools they don't want to put the money into the visas. So now they're being forced to, and this is, again, this is one of the benefits that I didn't think of when Brexit happened, was now these schools are being forced to confront the reality that non-native speaking teachers are actually fine and there's no problem with them.
Mm-hmm.
Because now you can't have the luxury. What would you rather have? A 22-year-old with a CELTA, or an online TEFL, or someone that's actually a non-native speaker, but they've got a CELTA. Some of them have got deltas. And 5 years ago, you wouldn't have even looked at this person. I know who I would want my kids being taught by.
Yeah, right. I mean, they're experienced teachers, and they're often quite passionate about it, aren't they?
Yeah.
If they're a non-native language teacher, because I mean, it's an uphill struggle for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But then again, as well, I think, if the problem with the salaries in Western Europe, and I understand that the profit margins are really thin, right? I understand that. I'm not expecting to be showered with riches, nor did I get into this job to make loads of money. But at the same time, I would like to be paid more than minimum wage. But this is the problem. I was the first generation of students in the UK that had to pay tuition fees, right? I've got the old student loan. My student loan's never going to go up. The rate of interest on my student loan, which I'm still paying off, but it's only like 0.5%. Yeah. You've got people now that I work with that are 23, 24. They've got 60 grand worth of debt, and I based on my experience of working with people from America and Canada, where you have a tendency for those loans will get put together into some kind of like CDO or security, and then someone buys that, and then once that happens, the terms of the loan change. I don't see anything stopping a future UK government from saying, we're going to package these loans and sell them off to a private third-party investor, and then the terms of those loans change. Now, if you're stuck abroad earning minimum wage, but there's no longer the threshold, what are you going to do? You're not going to be able to pay your loan off. Yeah. Because you just don't earn enough.
What you're probably going to do is disappear off the map.
Yeah, I know, but it's food for thought, and it's something I keep saying to new teachers. I said, you need to seriously look at getting a pension. This is not some kind of boomer saying to you, oh, when I was your age. It's not that. It's just like you've got, and I've seen it time and time again with people in this industry, and like they get to 45 or 50 and they end up getting divorced, and then they haven't got a penny to their name, and they're stuck in Italy because they've never really done anything else, or they're stuck in Spain, and maybe they're drinking a bit too much Chianti for their own good, so it's like you've got to be forward thinking. You've got to, and financially, and then from a teaching, pedagogical point of view, you've got to try and embrace new ideas just for your own sanity. Because if you're doing the same lesson again and again and again from like English 1, you go batshit crazy.
Yeah, I very rarely can kind of just use my own even old material without adapting it in some way, even if I only made it like last year. Just to pick it up and do the thing exactly the same again. I can't do that. There's got to be something to keep it fresh.
I went in yesterday. I went in the other day into a class, and I forgot why. I forget why, but I just had a load of chopsticks in my pencil case, and I opened the book and I've got my flip chart, and it's like modals of obligation and advice, and it's a lesson I had done 2 years ago, and I was just quickly flipped through the flip chart, and I was like, oh, this sucks. Just dogma it, get the chopsticks out. Boom, found a video on the internet, chopstick etiquette, 8 things you should never do. Boom, compare it to dining etiquette in Europe, write advice. Then let's go and make your own speaking part 3. A friend of yours has been invited to dinner at someone's house. Please could give your friend advice on things they should and shouldn't do in order to not offend the host. And they designed their own part 3 and gave it to each other. And then they did it, and then they did the feedback, and then and that was about an hour. And then I had them using chopsticks, and the language they were using in the lesson, I had a scrap piece of paper, I wrote it down, I had a pair of scissors, I cut it into strips, and then to recycle the vocab, they have to pick up the vocab with the chopstick and define it to their partner. They have to guess it. That was a much better lesson than what I had planned. But then again, because it was just like I was bored. I
Yeah,
just didn't
yeah.
want to do the lesson.
No,
So then
I
you're bored.
understand it, Anthony. And that is 100% my philosophy as well. I was just saying this to Neil, I think yesterday. I basically said to you, like, I only really want to teach and do the things that excite me. So if I'm going in, I'm feeling like, oh, is this the lesson I'm going to do today? Then that just makes me think that I need to do exactly the kind of thing that you're describing right now, Anthony, which is, you know what, out the window with this, let's do something else. Because you know it's infectious, isn't it? And if the teacher is not passionate about what they're teaching, then there's basically 0% chance that the students are going to be interested in it.
Isn't
Which I
this
think,
all too, put a dampener on it, too idealistic though? Because, you know, like, are we to, we love teaching. I mean, we're all talking about it right now, but, you know, not everyone loves their job. Do we have any right to say, be, just to love our jobs, but to other people not to do the same, not to be able to just put up with shit, you know, because, you know, the majority of the population, when they do their job, even though they're maybe passionate or have done the degree or educational background for it, they'll put up, you got to put up with shit at some point. It's like the Ricky Gervais thing, you know, where he's like, you can't go through life expecting not to be offended, you know, that kind of skit. But I think it kind of, I disagree with my own little point there, because I also want to kind of bring in a second point, which is, I think one of the core issues, especially for, you know, consummate professionals like you guys, is that it's really difficult for a teacher to demonstrate to someone that's thinking from an industry money standpoint that you have an ROI, a return on investment, that you have value that you can bring to the school that cannot be provided by, you know, that new teacher or that non-native teacher. From an analytical standpoint, you can objectively, I think, look and say this class is tons better, but it's how can you demonstrate that, and demonstrate that in terms of money and numbers. I think that's one of the most difficult things that I find that teachers, especially the most experienced ones, have. Yeah.
go and watch the teachers that you pay do their lessons. You don't have to give them feedback, but just, you know, get an idea of what they're doing. And by doing a CELTA or a cert test, or by doing some form of teacher training certificate, notable teacher training certificate, you're going to realize what it takes to plan a lesson. You're going to realize how much work goes into it. You're going to realize some of the stress and the anxiety that can be caused by having to stand in front of a class when you're not entirely sure what you're talking about when you're fresh off the boat. Because the CELTA and the cert test, they're 4 weeks. They don't get people ready for every facet of the TEFL classroom or ELT. And, you know, it's on the job training. So, you know, have some like kind of empathy with what goes on in the trenches, for lack of a better phrase, you know, the analogy of being like,
how do you demonstrate that to the market, though?
Sorry?
How do you demonstrate? I agree with you with the employer perspective, but how do you demonstrate it to the market? I mean, that's one of the issues that we have with this channel.
So this is
trying to change it.
This is what I would do. You have to future-proof your customer base.
Okay.
So you basically almost inoculate them against leaving you, because they're not going to get the same level of quality in the classroom elsewhere, and the same level of support and the same level of care from the customer service people, from the secretaries, from the school as a whole. You know, so for example, let you know, open classrooms for parents to come in and have a look at. I've done it before, it works. I don't know why more schools here in Europe don't do it. It's not a burden. Like, you know, if I do something and the parents are going, that's pretty cool. Oh, you know, my kids speak in English, like actually quite well. So, you know, and they're smiling and they're enjoying it. So I feel my money is going somewhere. It's not smoke and mirrors. Okay. And then parent insets. Get the parents in and teach them about the methodology you're using, why you use it, why it works. Okay. get them involved in, this is how you can help your kid with your homework based on what we do in the classroom. Have a learning management system. I used to use Edmodo a lot. Obviously, Edmodo's gone now. Invest in something. Moodle, black box, big blue button. You know, that kind of thing.
You've just got Google Class now as well, which is free.
Yeah,
so
Google Classroom, yeah.
Yeah.
What I used to do for parents' meetings in the last 2 years before Edmodo was kaput was I would get students to do a speaking part 3 or speaking part 4 on their own, record their answer, post it on Edmodo. I could then give it for feedback. I could give feedback on it. I know part 3 is supposed to be an interaction, but you know, it's just a way of getting them to do some speaking at home. And then when I did the parents' evenings, we did them online, and I've got everything on Active Inspire, but I've got the MP3 of their kids speaking embedded in the flip chart. And I would just say to them, would you like to actually hear your kids speaking in English? Yeah. Oh, yeah. No one's ever asked us that before. Okay, here you go. Bang. This is what we did in class 2 months ago. So and telling them in Italian, your kids talking about whether or not the town should build a new leisure centre. And they're like, oh, what? My kid just spoke English for 2 minutes straight. Yeah, that's what they did at home. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's your return on investment. But a lot of the people here are just, it's like when you say stuff like this, it's almost like it's a heresy. You know, you may as well be Martin Tyndale trying to write the Bible in fucking English. You know, like, it's just like enough. Like, it's this lack of big picture thinking. That is part of the problem. And I'm not talking about in terms of methodology or pedagogy or approaches. It's just in terms of the business model. You can still have Cambridge, you can still have Trinity, you can still do the exams, but on a day-to-day level, there's got to be scope for some schools to have the confidence in what they're doing in order to just try and change the paradigm a little. You know, is it that much of a heterodoxy to do this?
Is it fair enough to say, from the way you're speaking, Anthony, that you're not going to try setting up a school like this yourself?
No. I mean, I think what I would do is let's say like tomorrow I won Euro Millions and had 75 million overnight. I'd probably set up like some kind of like Zen Buddhist retreat for former ELT teachers. So like up in the mountains somewhere. And then like, you know, people would swing by and I'd be like, I'll come over, I want to show you something. See that guy over there? That's the guy that invented audiolingualism. And this is some guy just picking petals off a dandelion. You know, like that kind of thing, like, you know, kind of broken shell former teachers. And, you know, that's the Clill lot over there. There's you know, and you know, in the temple, like that's where the Suggestipedia lot hang out. You know? So, but no, I wouldn't. I mean, it's like, personally, I mean, I think I like what I do in the classroom, but it's the stuff that happens out of the side of the classroom. To segue into one of the things that I really wanted to talk about is mental health. So this kind of thing has a real impact on people's mental health, whether you're a new teacher, a teacher of 5 or 6 years, or you're like me and Rich, you've been doing this a lot longer. So like, I mean, I just wanted to ask you guys, what do you know about the term occupational burnout?
I'm going to say not much. I'm not that familiar with it.
I was actually expecting you to have something there, Neil, because I think you're someone who I certainly a couple of months ago, I think you're a little bit less busy now. I think you were somewhat.
I'm more busy now. I'm more busy now. I'm training
really?
people. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Well, no, for me, it's, and this kind of touches a little bit. I think we're going to go into mental health more, but just to rewind a little bit, I think one of the issues is with me with teaching. I no longer teach per se, as in classroom teaching, because COVID killed that for me. But with me, what happened was, as in China, was I kind of changed my perspective a little bit, and from that I stopped seeing myself as a teacher. I started seeing myself more as kind of like a contractor or self-employed or, business owner, like, when people say I'm a brand or something like that, it's the teaching is one component and I have to do other things. So, I started setting up websites, creating YouTube channels, trying to work out all the finances with the pensions and stuff like that. So, I'm putting on different hats, and I think that really helped with me not getting too burnt out, because obviously I still get a bit sad because I still see, myself, that's experience earning the same amount of money that someone just walks in off the boat or something like that. But I don't blame them. I don't blame the industry. I kind of blame myself in a way that I didn't kind of utilize that experience in a way that's going to earn me that money, which is, why I kind of started to extend out to, doing a website, YouTube, and, making materials and stuff like that. And I have this is a further aside, but I have a lot of hope for the future for teachers, because we've been talking with a bunch of people like Nicola Prentice. I'm sorry, Nicola. I got a name wrong before. Nicola Prentice, that's specifically focusing on language teachers and helping them get to grips with finances, how to invest, how to save for their pension, that sort of thing. And we talked with Event Horizons, TEFL Horizons, where they are doing kind of like a CELTA-esque course, but they're including a lot of business in there. And we talked to Russell Stannard, and most of his teaching now is or a lot of it is consulting with teachers on how to set up YouTube channels, how to utilize social media to further generate, money for themselves when they're stopping teaching and stuff like that. So, I have hope for that. And I think more with kind of a change of perspective, it might help with teacher burnout. But yeah, I don't know where I don't know if I've got lost there.
What you're describing
mm-hmm.
does sound very hopeful and positive,
mm-hmm.
but I don't think it's widespread enough yet to meet the kind of some of the rot that's set in at the heart of the industry, and that encompasses a lot of different parts of this industry too, not just the little language centers.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that there are people out there doing that, then good for them, and I would be more than happy to get involved in anything like that if I can. So, which is what I've started doing in my own small way at other places I've worked, like trying to encourage people to, like I've got it's an A4 piece of paper above my desk about ways to de-stress that's there for everyone to see. Mm-hmm. I noted that one of my co-workers a month ago was really, like I said, I went through occupational burnout with them, and they did a questionnaire, and I was like, you've got it. I've got it right now. Mm-hmm. Cards on the table. I am currently in therapy. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. Because I have occupational burnout. It's triggered depression. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's a 5-year cycle. The last time I saw Rich, I was in another cycle. Don't know if there's a correlation there. Don't know if it's Rich.
If I remember rightly, at Hanoi, quite a lot of people were suffering from that. Not necessarily because of the institution per se, but because of just the challenges of living in Hanoi.
I prefer to just start referring to Rich as the harbinger.
Yeah. But, seriously, I mean, I've got so going back to in terms of occupational burnout. So the phrase is, you first see the phrase about 1974. There was an American psychiatrist called Freudenberger, which is quite a good name. And he was the first to use the term burnout, and it's really he defined it as it's caused by excessive demands it's the excessive demands of your environment which lead to exhaustion, and it causes a feeling of like never-ending stress, and this has a direct impact on beliefs, motivation, and behavior. And there are three things it affects: physical, behavioral, mental. So on the physical level, It can be things like stomach pains, headaches, insomnia, sweating, shaking. Okay, so the actual physical manifestations of it. Behavioral, emotional seesaws, fits of anger, unbalanced emotional levels, and then mental. And I think this could be, to a lot of teachers, continuous feelings of boredom, this encouragement, and a disassociation with your surroundings, or disassociation from your students. And occupational burnout really is, you see much higher levels of it in places where the person works in the context of giving aid, or as a caregiver, so teachers, caregivers, nurses, very susceptible doctors, where you have strong or high levels of interpersonal connection and communication are required of you. So, and if I looked at 2 studies, and the prevalence of burnout in teachers, not just ELT, can be anything from 10 to 30%. That's quite high. And really, the way you measure burnout is there's something called the Muslak burnout inventory, and it uses a multi-dimensional model. And there are 3 things that it looks at. So it's emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and a reduction in the sense of personal accomplishment. So the emotional exhaustion leads to developing a negative attitude towards your job, or your students, or your co-workers, or your life outside, because there are socio-economic and personal factors in this. It's not just the job, which then leads to depersonalization. So you disassociate yourself from your surroundings, which then leads to the fact that you perceive yourself to be ineffective. You cannot be an effective teacher if you disassociate yourself from your students. And
so it's like people really start to see it then as just the job. It's the place they go, that they have to go to get money. It's no longer that they're doing it because they feel something about being a teacher.
Yeah, and some of the things that can lead into this can be things like the behavior of the students, or the fact that if you're only teaching, like, for example, really low level kids, for example, you're never really going to get that much back. Where if you're teaching a group of C1 17 to 18 year olds, you can have an actual conversation. There's a bit of meaningful interaction there.
Right.
So and then you've got, for example, it's also linked to, okay, so the piece of work is Bunk and Shalford, 1993. That's the article it comes from. And it's based on social exchange theory. So a lack of reciprocity in social exchange relationships are both interpersonal, which is teacher-student, and, this is the interesting thing for me, inter-organizational. So your lack of reciprocity and communication with the organization you work for can have a very strong effect on this. So, and it's and these are things that are coupled with high workload, ambiguity in instruction, in the arbitrary deadlines and time pressure, inadequate salary, and the perceived low status of your profession. So, yes, we can bang on about salaries, but they affect how you perceive your job. It is important. And also, going back to the difference between, say, working for someone like the British Council compared to working for a family-run small school in southern Spain or something, the characteristics of the work itself, so the demands of the job linked to the type of resources you're given. So low resources coupled with high demands activate what's called a depletion in the energetic cycle level of a teacher. So, for example, if you have got a lot of work to do, and the photocopier breaks down, and the computers don't work, and the CD player is broken, and etc., and it's always one problem after another, which then causes more time to be spent solving problems, which then takes away from what you feel you need to do. That can have a very damaging effect on your mental health if it's sustained over a long period of time, while at the same time a lot is being expected of you. So if you expect a lot from teachers, you have to give them the tools to do the job. It's not just, gone are the days where we can just have a board marker and a pen and a whiteboard. Even though there's not necessarily anything wrong with that. But again, if you're going to do progress tests, if you're going to expect lots of continuous assessments done, and they need to be photocopied and they need to be printed, and you need to do listening tests, etc., 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 you need to have the resources. And a lot of schools, because the profit margins are so thin, cannot reinvest into their schools, but then they expect wonders. You don't have that problem, thankfully, with companies like the British Council, which is one of the great things about them, is you are given all the resources you could possibly want in order to do the job to your best ability. So that's basically what I've been talking about, been reading about, and this is what I've been going through at various points of my career. And I'm in a cycle at the moment. I mean, I'm not worried about any kind of stigma, and I think putting this kind of thing out there, and it's not because I need someone to help me plan my lessons. It's not that I need someone to explain grammar to me. It's not that I need to be mollycoddled. But for me, it's definitely a case of there seems to be a lack of encouragement. There seems in a lot in the industry, there seems to be, I can't, if everything is perceived as being not worth it, like the salary, the job, the student satisfaction, the parent satisfaction, and there's a perceived lack of even like you're just doing the lessons the same thing again and again, you're just running through the motions, it's just going to grind you down. It's a very difficult cycle to break out of, which is why I went back into therapy. But I would really like to see companies in this industry start to take this thing seriously, because it affects your students, and it's going to affect your pass rates of exams, and it's going to affect your student retention, and it's going to affect your staff retention. This is not a small problem, and this has been the elephant in the room for the past 10 or 20 years that no one wants to talk about. And gone are the days where a pizza in southern Italy was like, 100,000 lira, and everyone could live the high life in the Dolce Vita. It's done. It's over. Ukraine, Brexit, inflation here is rampant. Okay. So can we, if we can't get amazing salaries, can we at least have work environments that take into consideration that you're putting them into an environment where they don't necessarily speak the language, where the culture could be quite different. These are external factors which are important and which can decimate someone's mental health if it's not taken care of. And the other thing as well is that there seems to be a wait until it's broken attitude. So let's wait until the person snaps and has the breakdown before we intervene and do anything. You can't deal with that with mental health. This is an occupational health issue. Now, in the UK, this should be taken seriously under the Health and Safety Executive and the OSS, right? And there are guidelines on this, on occupational mental health. Why aren't we looking at this in the ELT? We are literally taking people and we are dropping them in the fire to a lot of extent, whether in South America, Southeast Asia, Southern Europe. It's an alien environment for people. It can be stressful. You're then putting them into a position where they've got to do a job where they have to emotionally invest themselves, both in their work and their students. That can lead to burnout. And then we're not giving them support mechanisms. And the other elephant in the room is that most of the managers that get made into DOSers and ADOSers in this job don't get any training on this. They don't know how to support their staff in terms of mental health. And it's something's got to give. Otherwise, you're going to see people leaving the profession because, like I said, the actual geographical or the cultural allure of what we do isn't what it used to be. So then why would you come and do this for a minimum wage job and not have any work-life balance?
I think there's so much there to talk about, Anthony. The one thing that really resonates quite highly with me is how you say the perceived low status of the job. And I think that's something that I felt for most of my teaching career, actually. And I'm fortunate enough now that I don't feel it quite as much, I guess, because I sort of feel like, I'm working for an actual college and all the rest of it. And it's got a proper contract. And, I sort of feel a little bit more respected. But certainly working in Europe in language schools, in my 9 years in Spain, I think it was very rare that I felt sort of professionally proud to be doing what I was doing. I think one small moment was when I first became a Cambridge English oral examiner, because for a second there you kind of think, oh wow, I'm an examiner for Cambridge now or something. That soon wears off, but it does give you a little thing for a while. But actually getting respect as a teacher and in the classroom, obviously, your students will kind of bond with you in some ways, but you sort of feel like, it happened to me a lot that I was kind of questioning, what am I doing with my life? and even just before I did the diploma, I was like, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to put all this money into doing a teaching diploma and actually commit myself to this whatever it is, this kind of semi backpacker career slash, there's so much to it when you dive into it and dive into all the pedagogy and what you can do in the classroom and the effect you have on people's lives, and the fact that if you bump into a student that you had 10 years ago, they'll remember you and they'll be like, oh, look, it's Rich. If I went back to Valencia, I would bump into students, they'd see me and they'd be like, oh, wow, you taught me this or you taught me that. So you do have this incredible effect on people's lives, but the status isn't there. And it's certainly not from the institution. And this reminds me of a place me and you worked in Cordova, and just what a huge amount of disillusion there was there. I remember when we first arrived, and I kind of bumped into all the other teachers and realized there were so many teachers getting hired. Immediately felt a red flag, because that was the first time that I'd had a proper contract working for IH, and I knew that they were the they were the first centre, the pioneer IH centre in Cordova. And, I actually felt quite good about it, because we'd had the interview with, can't remember his name, but he was super. Yeah. Paul Ash. Yeah. Because he's still going in his kind of teacher training way. I'm connected with him on LinkedIn, and it looks like he's still as passionate as he was. But in the interview
with Marissa in Athens, Marissa was my Delta tutor.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Very good. Well, it seems like his passion's still there, and him in the interview, I mean, he was like a big motivation for me to go there, because we're like, right, this is a serious institution. This guy's super serious about, CPD and all the rest of the stuff. I was jumping into the diploma at the time. He was talking about doing action research at the centre and loads of stuff that really interested me. We got there. He was fired. They'd hired a ton of teachers.
Why did they fire him? Sorry, why did they fire him?
Didn't want to do their bidding.
Oh, okay. So they just found.
Then again, I'm currently working for IH, and you go on their job board, and that specific school that Rich has just mentioned, every year they're looking for academic managers. Every year they're looking for 9 to 10 teachers, and it's just like, this is, again, when is the penny going to drop for the people that run that school? You're the problem. It's not the teachers. The teachers don't like. I mean, again, it's like people leave bad managers. They don't leave bad schools. They don't leave bad cities. They leave bad managers or bad owners in this case. So, and it's like, I mean, I said earlier that, I'm currently going, I'm in therapy. I've got occupational burnout. I'm feeling depressed and all this kind of stuff. And this, the last time I did this, I was working in the British Council in Hanoi, and the difference that I had there in terms of support from my managers to what I'm getting now is chalk and cheese. I had actual support, like people checking in on me. There were procedures. They go, well, we're not going to give you classes at this time of day. Honest to God, emotional support sometimes. And this is when I say support, sometimes you just want a manager to come up and give a shit and just be like, how, because it's really difficult to go to someone and say, I am broken. I need help. And then once you've done that, it's then to do it again and again and again. I'm having a bad day. But if someone comes up and goes, you're not looking that good today, you're okay, I'm a bit stressed.
All of the best managers that I've ever come across have been, which in TEFL is not that many, but they're very much that kind of personal approach. They kind of they get to know you, and like you say, they show that they give a shit in some way. That they actually do care about you, not just a kind of cog in the works.
Not a gap on the timetable to be moved around.
Yeah. I mean, I remember one time when I was having a really, really tough time personally, and I was it was a busy time at work as well, and I emailed my sort of line manager and said, look, things are getting really tough for me. I'm just giving you a heads up that, I'm not saying anything really, just that things are really tough for me personally right now, and she just said something like, sorry to hear that. Let me know if I can do anything. I don't think that was quite enough. I kind of felt like, because that was an email as well. It was an email response.
Got to be proactive. And that is, right, thank you so much for this email. I'm sure it wasn't easy to send. and I'm really glad that you brought this to my attention. So can we schedule a meeting in order to put down on paper what I can do to support you going forward, in order to make sure that you're doing the job to the best of your abilities and you're meeting your job profile, but also in a way that doesn't burn you out, doesn't overstress you, that kind of thing. It's like, is it too much to ask for people to be humane?
Yeah, it was just that was it. I think all I needed at that time was just something a bit more personal. And like you say, even just sitting down for 5 minutes for a coffee and just to say, so tell me about it. Okay, I see. Just something personal, whereas I felt that the response was kind of robotic. And what happened that night, I had massive insomnia, couldn't sleep at all. I was supposed to be teaching the next day and I phoned in sick because I was like, can't do it, And if I just had a little bit of support, that might have been avoided. So yeah, I can completely relate to what you're saying.
I think about 5 weeks ago, I sent myself home on a Monday. I'm going home. I'm a mess. I can't focus on anything. And that was the day. I mean, I'm lucky. I have an amazing wife, puts up with a lot of stuff. But sometimes you can't always put stuff on your partner, because it can be too much for them too. So like schools, employers have a duty of care. You've made the decision to recruit these people, to bring them here. You need to support them. And it's not just finding them a flat sometimes. And it's not just making sure they've got the right book. Sometimes you actually need to be more proactive and look at things. If that person is struggling, why are they struggling? We need to come and have a chat with you, but in a way that's humane and emotionally involved, and doesn't make them feel less of a person. I really like the way that the certain former managers we've had that we've shared, like people like Lily, for example, unconditional positive regard. That approach to managing people is, I think, a fantastic way of doing it. Yeah, because it's like, we're going to support you right up until the very end. Like, no one can ever turn around and say that manager, that company never did enough for me. Because again, there has to be some kind of personal responsibility. I'm not saying it's all on the school. Teachers have to take responsibility for their actions. Teachers have to advocate for themselves as well. So if anyone watching this, if you're feeling you're having issues, advocate for yourself. You'll feel much better for it.
Yeah, I think we're kind of like a point now where mental health, just in general, is kind of a bit of a crisis point, just across occupations, and we're at the very beginning of understanding and implementing how to do this in the workforce, and I see it as quite complex because we have, I think generally managers and the best managers and leaders are those people that have that personal connection, see you as a human, and they get involved with your life and want to know, and that really helps. But conversely, as an employer, I'm not sure to the boundaries of that. So like if I have an STI or some sort of physical health problem, I'm not going to sit down with my manager and explain my physical health problem to them, and I'm not sure how comfortable I would feel.
It's very easy to get a doctor's note. It's very easy to get a doctor's note. Physical ailment.
But it should be easy for the mental health aspect as well. What I'm just saying, but like some people won't be comfortable, but then you can kind of go to the other extreme. I want to say I 100% agree with you, but I'm just kind of trying to think of all angles and play devil's advocate. I'm thinking of the other end where it kind of feels like, when you hear the Silicon Valley wokey-esque places where it's like, well, this person can't, take calls right now because they're, they're having an appreciation moment or something like that. Where it's kind of,
I know what you mean.
Yeah. So I'm like,
how
do you resolve it so a company even can't just do this and implements procedures where it's just band-aiding the person as well, just so they can get them back into that classroom, not on a physical way, but in a mental health way. Can I just, have a chat with Anthony and, make him feel a little bit better and then push him into the classroom? Because, that just kind of feels a little bit, I could see employers doing that and being exploitative. You know what I mean? So
yeah. No, I know what you mean.
How?
And I think it's more like it's a whole person approach in terms of it's the whole company approach. So, for example, it's putting effort into having activities outside of work for staff that maybe are organised by the staff, but maybe the school helps organise them, but doesn't necessarily give any money to it. Or it can just be something as simple as a manager taking out a load of teachers and just buying them a drink and being like, guys, I'm not going to stay all night. I used to do this when I was a manager. I'm not going to stay all night because you don't want me here. Buy a couple of beers for you all. Here's the money. Thanks for all your hard work this week. I'll catch you later. I'd have a beer with them and then I'd go. Yeah. Or sometimes I'd stay a bit longer. But there's also little things you can do. But also, I think companies have to be proactive. So I said earlier, but you don't wait until people break. You've got to stop them getting to that point. And how do you stop them?
Yeah, but is that the employer's responsibility or is that a person's?
Yes. I think employers have a duty of care.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I think that especially if you're working in a foreign country, okay, you don't necessarily speak the language, and because this isn't just you've got to look after me. You contribute to my own mental health and well-being because it's good for your business. Mm-hmm. Because teachers cannot teach if they're depressed, or they're going to snap, or they're going to yell. If you go into a classroom and you've got full-blown depression and you're bipolar and you're not on any medication, and a student does something to annoy you, right, and you absolutely lose it with them, you're gonna get complaints from parents. You're gonna be potentially in line to be fired. Which means you then lose a teacher. Which then you have to replace. It's ripples on a pond, okay? And it's in people, it's in organizations and other teachers as co-workers, as colleagues, in order to support each other as well. And it's difficult to do. And again, it might sound idealistic. And I'm not saying we have to, all go around like, little bells and Tibetan chimes and stuff. Not that, but just like be mindful of each other. Be mindful that we work in a profession that can lead people to have mental health problems in terms of burnout, depression, anxiety. I mean, I know teachers that get anxious before they go to class. These are experienced people. Sometimes I get anxious before I go to class. If it's a brand new class and it's maybe a level, maybe it's the first time I've taught in that country. And it's not like, stage fright. It's genuine anxiety. Like I'm just going to have to take this slow for the first until I get a feeling of who these people are, But these things happen. Like teaching is not working at a call center. If you phone in sick, someone's got to cover your lesson. Yeah. If a teacher's off sick for 2 weeks because they've got they've had a mental breakdown or something, or they've got some kind of anxiety disorder or some other mental health problem, that means that teachers then have to cover that for 2 weeks, which means maybe the students don't like it, which means maybe the parents don't like it because they don't like teachers being changed all the time. I've seen this happen before. It's in the best interest of the centre to have healthy, productive, happy staff who feel valued, who feel that there are upward progression for them, that there are professional development opportunities, that they can grow emotionally, personally, and professionally in a company, and that they feel valued. And then they will do their utmost best in the classroom, and the students will respond to it. This is a holistic way of looking at things, and I think it's overlooked. It's criminally overlooked in Europe for some reason. I don't know why.
Do you think that any of those places are actually out there? Because I mean, it's something that it was kind of the thing I was looking for in Spain, is exactly what you've described. And I did wonder whether, there are some academies like that out there, but obviously they don't hire new teachers because the teachers don't leave.
I know. It's like the lost cities of gold. It's I mean, maybe all of those schools were on an island called Atlantis, and it just was so good it fell into the sea, and they've never been heard of again. I don't know, You know,
Yeah.
it's like the mythical school. I'm sure there are schools like that out there. I mean, I know I've got a former colleague who left last year who's gone to the north of Italy, and she's working at a school and the teachers have all been there for 15, 20, 30 years. She's the youngest person, and they're on the they're on the full Italian contract. They get paid in August. They get the 13th month in December. They get housing allowance, and she's like, it's weird because like the teachers just turn up at 4:45 and the classes start at 4 and they just go and teach and go home again, and they don't socialize each other because they're all married and they've got lives outside of work. Whereas in other places I've worked in, you are just in a bubble. And this is the other problem. There are too many bubbles. And when bubbles burst, it's a problem.
Yeah.
So like the people that you work with are the people that you socialize with.
That's right. Yeah. And it gets cliquey and you get the drama
and then you get the drama of the potential of people then hook up and people. There are relationships which can either start or break up within those bubbles, and I don't think that's also good for people's mental health either, because you cannot get away from work. And recently, when I've been out with coworkers, I've actually, the minute they start talking about work, I say to them, either stop or I'm going home, because I don't want to hear about it.
Yeah,
you know, like I will kind of talk about teaching, but I don't want to talk about work.
not about the actual place where you work.
If someone says to me, "How was your day?" or like someone the other day was, "How was your cover stop?" I had to do an emergency cover the other day. I said, "No." I said, "That's work. I'm not talking about it."
I think that's another point to explore as well. Is one of the factors, along with the schools, is when you go to these new places, generally you're going alone, and there's a big isolation, and especially if someone's not used to that from where they were in their home country, then you're in the middle of Asia, you're isolated. That's going to be stressful in and of itself. And then generally, the local culture and other people may be kind of like, well, what do we do to relax? Oh, we have a drink, or there's this cool little thing that you can take over here that's it's got some leaves and you chew them and it makes you feel good and all that sort of thing. Yeah, well, yeah, I'm not saying anything, but and it kind of, there's people that are already there that are burnt out, and then they're like, well, this is how we cope, you should do this as well, and it kind of perpetuates. And like the amount of alcoholism that I see within the industry, and just substance abuse in general.
And, substance abuse in general, definitely.
And like the people that you
will, a fair bit of that.
The locals generally that would, because there's different types of locals as well, that would know that there's this community of isolated people that kind of ingratiate themselves to, that aren't always the best actors. I don't know if you've come across that, but like it seems to be a big melting pot for just it's almost like it's set up to burn you out from the beginning. It's just they light the candle, and how fast is it going to go?
I mean, when I arrived in Korea in 2009, I was the first 2 years I was in Korea. I was working I was one of the English speaking conversation teachers. I was the only foreign teacher at my middle school, in Yongdo Island in Busan, Gangster Island, down in the hood.
Okay.
Only white person in that district probably. But I arrived in Korea at the induction, and there were like 400 or 500 other teachers there.
Mm-hmm.
And like about 250 were going to Busan. So like I met a lot of people there. And that 5 years in Korea, the 2.5 in Busan, the 2 years at the British Council in Seoul, very, very intense. Like, living life to excess, work hard, go out late, Itaewon, go on like benders, sometimes like, go down on the KTX and wake up in Busan and then start, I've come down from Seoul, I'm in Busan, let's go out,
Mm-hmm.
It's 9 a.m, yeah, let's go. That kind of thing. So yeah, but you're right. And you go into two things. You're right. You go into an environment where it's like, do what we do. This is how you cope.
Mm-hmm.
Not the best, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, though, on the other side, you go into a ready-made environment which has an inbuilt support system. and you don't have to handle, you might be in a bubble, but you're in a much bigger bubble. You're not necessarily spending time with the people that you work with, the people that manage. And then, you know, in Korea as well, there were board game clubs, and there was improv, and there were spoken words, and there was a music scene, and there was lots of other things. Where I currently live, there are 2 cafes. That's it. And thank God we're close to Sicily because we can get the ferry over. But things like that, you know, so you're like, it's your social circle is this big. That's had an effect on me, definitely. And I do find, and my wife has said this as well. She goes, the difference between the people that have only worked in Europe, the difference to the people that have gone further afield, there is a difference. Like, we're a bit more adventurous, for lack of a better phrase, maybe risk takers, because it takes, you know, it takes balls to go to Korea or Vietnam and not know anyone and not speak the language and not know what the hell you're walking into, you know, and then to go there and actually make a life, even if it's I was in Vietnam for 5 years, I was in Korea for 5 years, to survive. You've got to be able to, you know, manage yourself. And, you know, if you are getting into problems with mental health and things, you've got to be able to have the wherewithal to pull yourself back as well. You know, so again, like I said earlier, there's got to be some personal responsibility. It's not all about, you know, the people that you work with and the people that you work for. But no, you're definitely right about the you know, cope this way, and that can have a detrimental effect. Because I found it very strange when I got to Busan, and you go to the foreigner bars, and there are people there who have been there for 15 years, and they're like, oh, I can't. And they work at university, so they get like all summer off, and they're like, I can't wait to get out. I hate Korea. And you're like, how long have you been here? Oh, 25 years. I'm like, so you hate it?
Hate it.
I can't stand it. Yeah,
there is a lot of that everywhere, I think, to some extent.
Yeah, it is very weird. I mean, we work in a bizarre, sometimes absurd industry.
Yeah,
we really do. I mean, it's like, I mean, I've been saying for years that someone's got to write a soap opera about this. You know, I mean, like, podcasts are one thing, is you know, it's all good, but or just like a you know, just where's the book on ELT? I'm not talking about a methodology book. I'm talking about the book, the takedown, the scathing indictment. You know, the warts and all book.
Debunking ELT or something.
There is a book that's come close by Michael Long and Jeff Jordan. Michael Long recently passed away. Jeff Jordan, I don't know if you're familiar with his blog, but that man slaughters sacred calves for a living. If anyone wants to see anything, you know, kind of very non-fiction kind of thing, factual, academic, go on his blog and just read his entire takedown of Penny Ear's language teaching. And she has people like Scott Thornbury rushing to her defense, and he's not having it.
Is this the book English Language Teaching Now and How It Could Be?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
I just Googled it.
Yeah, that last chapter, How It Could Be, is it really goes after people like IH and the BC, and
that's interesting.
But the book is like 65 quid or something.
Yeah,
so,
I'm seeing that.
Yeah.
It's such a bizarre industry, and I love it, and I have a deep respect for it, and I think the people that take it seriously and that are consummate professionals, there's so much innovation and you know, thought around education and learning that, you know, like, one of the reasons that we started our podcast, we're like, this needs to be, you know, what people are doing in ELT needs to be in more mainstream public education, and yet it's not. It's looked, you know, it's often looked down upon, or people have no idea about what we're talking about. It's like a hidden gem of this cowboy pioneer world.
What I would like to see is, especially in the UK education system, is to bring back the PGCE in ESL. There used to be one, because now there's a demand for EAL teachers in schools, and I've met EAL teachers, and they have no idea what they are doing.
Because they're not
Interesting.
they're just like adjacent, like they've done like an English language degree, and then
they wouldn't know communicative or task-based language teaching if it dressed up as an Ofsted inspector. And it's not their fault.
yeah,
Yeah.
because they don't know.
My sister's a PGC qualified primary school teacher, and she has to teach Spanish. She doesn't speak Spanish.
What? Hold on. What?
Yeah, she's.
Did she have a degree in Spanish?
No, she's like, she did history. She and the government are like, oh, it's only vocabulary.
Did you say primary or secondary?
Primary.
Primary, yeah. Well, I mean, that's the requirement is the requirement for primary in the UK is PGCE, and you can teach anything, Neil. That's the score. Isn't
That
it?
doesn't make it. Wait, no, hold on. The it works the same way for governments. To be honest, I know in Canada right now, like the person that's in charge of foreign policy was like their backgrounds, like there was an English lit professor or something like that. You know, like this is absolutely And it's same with the UK government. You know, does anyone have any experience related to their ministerial role, you know, in education or what? Yeah, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
But then again, like I think that raises a valid point too, because one of the things that you see now in ELT is that schools are starting to do CLIL courses, but there's no training. So, and not just on CLIL, on actual the subjects that these people have got to teach. So I teach IGCSE History. That's my degree. That's what I specialised in for years. That's fine. I can do it. But I haven't had any training on the pedagogy behind history teaching. I've done the research myself off my own back. But then again, if you're going in to teach CLIL maths or CLIL geography or something, a lot of teachers, especially newly qualified teachers, are big. I'm only just getting to grips with the language teaching element of my job. Now you're asking me to do this too. Where's the support? Where's the training for it? And it's because, again, you've got such a plethora of schools now that some companies are looking for that niche in order to tie down that part of the market. That's fine. I think doing CLIL is great. I love teaching CLIL. I'd like to see CLIL more embedded in syllabuses and curriculums for teaching exams.
It's not even just CLIL. You know, like when you do the exam, you know, prep classes, you know, you're doing something for IELTS or something like that. I remember having a surreal moment where I had a class where there was a couple of Korean nuclear engineers. That's what they were trained as, and there was a section on, you know, like going over fission and fusion, and I'm teaching them the language and stuff like that. I'm like, this is just so bizarre, because, you know, I'm trying to correct them, and they're like, no, we're pretty sure it doesn't work that way. I'm like, well, this is what it says in the book, but I don't have any experience with this. But yeah,
that's great though, because that would be like a really good sort of personalized example, wouldn't it, if the specialist topic is actually something that students know.
Yeah.
But you know, just to touch on what you were saying there, Anthony, this is something we talked about quite recently, where a lot of these things, especially the kind of nice sounding things, and also things that I very much support, like task-based learning and CLIL, they've kind of just become, in the industry, they've become like icons of themselves. They're kind of simple representations of what they really are. I said this just the other day. You know, a lot of institutions might say, yeah, we do task-based learning. And you go, well, what does that mean? I think it means we do tasks in class. It's like, that's not task-based learning. Just because you do tasks doesn't make it task-based learning. And just because you put language together with another subject doesn't make it CLIL. Like there's kind of more underlying to that. But from a marketing perspective and a management perspective, a lot of these institutions, they don't care about that. They just want to sell it as, look, we do tasks. We do task-based learning in class. Send your kids to us. They'll do some tasks. Be great.
Well, it's just a brand,
mean,
you know, like as I'm a parent, and you know the amount of things that people say, "Oh, this is a Montessori school" or whatever, and you're like, what do you mean it's a Montessori school? It's like, oh, we use a lot of wood. You know, you know,
Well,
all right,
I love
right,
it.
okay.
Well, there's all kinds of products, isn't there, for kids, like toys and stuff that they say inspired by Montessori principles, and you're like, Montessori is it's a classroom pedagogy.
It's
What do you mean
bullshit.
toys?
It's you know, like that sort of stuff is bullshit, and most of the stuff that you sell to kids is bullshit. If you want any sort of educational benefit, it should be a toy that promotes interaction with caregivers. You know, that's basically the studies.
Can we have a toy that teaches critical thinking, please? You know, but like, no, what you said as
Yeah,
well.
it's called a parent.
What you're talking about, I think, is really the prevalence of dogma in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things which are dogmatic.
Yeah,
it's almost like, you know, I mean, at what point do we end up with, like, you know, grand inquisitors running around burning people? Like
yeah. I know exactly what you're saying, Anthony. I think you know, I'm kind of a bit like you in that I can appreciate all methodologies. I can appreciate sort of PPP for what it is. I can appreciate you know, TBL. I can appreciate things like Suggestopedia, you know, and I like to do that. But what I see when people have these conversations is very, very polarized, old way versus new way, and none of them really understanding the pros and cons of what they're, you know, what they're talking about.
I think, yeah, no, I agree, Rich. And I think as well, there's a lot of people do things in this industry just because it's done or it's done that way. And then you say, why?
Yeah.
Why? Yeah, this is the way. It's not
This
the
is the way,
Mandalorian.
yeah.
Yeah. Or what's the other guy from the Mandalorian? You need to do a progress test. I have spoken.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
Yeah. But it's so fun. You know, like it's and you just like you always get this feeling that if you question it, that you're somehow a pariah. And like, you know, I'm not necessarily uncomfortable with that role, because, like, you know, I'm very much if you look at the, you know, do you remember like the inside cover notes of the Music for the Jilted Generation by The Prodigy? Always outnumbered, never outgunned. That's me. Like, bring it on. Seriously.
I've always been a fan of the Christopher Hitchens quote that he says, my own opinion's enough for me, and I reserve the right to have it defended against any consensus, any majority, anywhere, any place, anytime. So
yeah,
you only need one, and you can give your piece, you know.
Yeah. But I mean, I think I don't want to kind of represent myself as some kind of burnt out, embittered, you know, ELT teacher. I like my job. There are sometimes when I'm like, and I like watching the kids succeed, and I invest myself in their success, and I want them to do well, and I want them to live in a society, in a plurilingual society with a pluralistic outlook that embraces numerous ideas and strives to see things from the other perspective. So when I teach history, I'm very interested in things like perspicacity, to the perceptions of stuff, not just Eurocentric stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, so, you know, because understanding history makes people better global citizens, mm-hmm. because you're able to, you know, understand why the other side of that argument, or the other opinion, or the other way of doing it, where does that come from? Mm-hmm. Okay, so and I think, you know, there's a lot of good that goes on in this industry. There's a lot of good organizations in this industry, and there's a lot of good organizations that could be better, but then maybe they're not sure how to do it better. So who can help them? How can we help them? You know?
Do you have any ideas or anything you would like to share, you know, that's kind of like, that's helped? I think first part, your ideas for change, but second part, on a more personal level, you know, what is it that's kind of that's helped you, that you would like to have been told before, that you would like to kind of pass on to any teacher that's listening, watching?
Keep a mental health journal. Learn to compartmentalize. and compartmentalize properly. Make sure that you don't get sucked into the kind of hamster wheel of constant professional development at the expense of your personal life. So there's got to be work-life balance. Doing the Delta is great. Doing the TYLEC or being a TYLEC tutor and guiding people through the TYLEC is great, but it's not everything. It's only a piece of paper. It's what you do with it afterwards that matters. So, it doesn't matter about I honestly, if someone's got a distinction on their Delta, I don't care. If they're a great teacher, awesome. Does one make the other? I don't know. But there's got to be things out there. You've got to have something outside of teaching. You've got to have personal connections outside of teaching. So, for example, when I lived in Seoul, I had a few friends who were in the US military. Nothing to do with teaching. Never talked to them about work. We just had beers, played darts, played pool, and they would tell us about, we've got to go off next weekend and jump out of a plane, because they were in 101st Airborne. They were Special Forces. And you're like, oh, that's cool. That's something completely different. So try your best to get personal connections with the people around you, in the situation you're living in, that are nothing to do with your job, and in terms of and that is one way where you will learn the language quicker as well. So there's that.
That's something that I would definitely say. I think everyone should be at least making a token effort to learn a bit of the local lingo. I mean, with Spain, I went all out with it, and I got a lot out of that. It really does help you understand the culture. I didn't do quite so well with Vietnam, but I think it's important for language teachers to experience language learning.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that. I mean, and furthermore, like going back to what Neil asked, I think as well. So, like you said, keep a mental health journal. If you ever feel yourself slipping towards that place where you don't necessarily want to be, visualization techniques. There's loads of stuff on the internet, and if things do get bad, ask for help. No one's going to judge you, and if they do judge you, then maybe that's not the school you need to be working at. Your health and your mental well-being comes first, because you can't be a good teacher if you don't have it, and it's going to affect your students. In terms of industry-wide change, I mean, that's
yeah, that's
the problem is, like
where do you
kind of
even
alluded
start?
to, throughout the podcast, there's so many of these systems in place, powerful institutions making lots of money, Cambridge English, the Cambridge CELTA, Trinity, they're all in there selling their little tickets to get to the next level of whether it's language learning or language teaching. And to kind of come along and say, we need to rock the boat and change this and that, there's obviously going to be resistance on their part. And it's really hard, I think, to reach the market on a wide kind of on a bigger level without them being on board. You could certainly, at a local level, you could have your little local academy which does things differently, and after 10 years maybe you build up a reputation of having just really great teachers and everyone wants to send their kids there and whatnot. But I think on a system level it's really difficult because of the established characters that are in there. And I thought it was very interesting as well, Anthony, just to add a point to that, what you said before, you mentioned about there's loads of research going on, and there has been for years. The amount of money that's been sunk into language teaching research, there's loads of it, and it's really fascinating stuff. You can go and find articles about all these experiments they've done with TBL and different kinds of, and it's really innovative and interesting. But as you say, we never actually see it in the classroom, apart from as like some experimental class that was part of the study. It's like, when is the lexical approach going to become the de facto way of teaching? It's just, I don't know. It's been niche now for like 30 years,
Yeah, I mean, I know. I mean, okay. So going back to what Neil said about like industry-wide change, I would like to see companies like, what's the word? The companies that inspect schools, like for example in Italy it's ILE, I'd like to see them pay more attention to the teachers too, and actually say to school, do you know what? I think you're overworking your teachers. I think in terms of your product, in terms of the delivery, you might want to reduce the contract hours. I'd like to see Cambridge and Trinity and IH and companies like this go to TEFL and say to schools, right, you're making your teachers work 28 hours a week. You're never going to get the results you want with that much work. Drop it down to 20. Where this industry standard, I don't know which meeting I missed, where everyone thought that 25 hours a week in Europe was doable. 20. Cut it down to 20. Give us the time to then plan lessons properly. And also, the big thing for me, and a lot of teachers have said this to me too, planning is work. Don't do it for free. Pay us for it. Because you're going to get better lessons. You're going to get better results.
Yeah.
I mean,
IH has such a bad reputation with teachers now because they haven't kept up any quality controls in terms of working conditions of teachers.
So what I would do is timetable planning, right? And I'm also for this. One of the reasons why the British Council expects high standards from its teachers is because it does pay for planning. No one at the British Council can turn around and go, well, I was too rushed. And they go, hang on, we're paying you 45 minutes per hour and a half to plan those lessons. So you better bloody well plan those lessons properly. And it's transparent. Whereas if you're timetabling an external class that finishes at 2:30, and then I've got to run back to the centre for 3, what do you think I'm going to be doing? I'm going to rush in through the door and go, where's Teaching Unplugged by Thornbury? The dogma today. And I can do it, but not everyone else can. Yeah. I did a lesson last year in those circumstances. And one of my students had a pack of biscuits, and I just did a dogma lesson on biscuits. And in the end, they designed their own biscuit, right? And on biscuits. Okay? But I'm at my best when I'm put in those positions when I've got to really think on my feet, and then the creative juices just really start pumping with me. But again, that
requires a lot of experience to get to that point.
Exactly. So, but schedule planning time, pay for planning time, put it on a teacher's timetable, and then you can expect higher standards as well. I'm not expecting something for nothing. If you want to hold me to a transparent, predefined standard, go for it, and I'll meet it, and a lot of other people will too. But in order to meet that standard, we need the time to do the job properly.
Yeah.
Okay. Marking also work. I'm sorry, marking's work.
I've got quite a bit of exam marking work as part of my role at the moment, and it's just like when I have, for me it was just 45 exams sat in front of me, but that's enough for me to just go.
It's such a gorilla on the back, not a monkey, it's a gorilla.
Well, that's it's a lot of food for thought, and I think at the beginning of the episode we said that you would be providing some incredible insight, and I think you really delivered, and it especially going into depth on a more personal side, because we don't often see teachers bearing warts and all, and it's such a deep and complex issue with the whole industry that I feel like we could keep going on and go into another episode about this, and maybe even segment it out. But we do have to tie things up. So I'm wondering if you have any final thoughts that you would like to share, the quotes or whatever you want. I'm going to give you the open floor, and you can take us home.
Or anything you want to plug, Anthony. I don't know if you've got any side projects or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So if I could just plug my the heavy metal podcast I do with some of my friends, In the Abyss heavy metal podcast. Nice. We record every Friday. We now have listeners in 57 countries. We are looking to promote and underground bands, and specifically we're trying to, not unsuccessfully, but we're trying to champion women's metal bands and female guitar players in order to, again, break a stigma, because it's quite prevalent in the world of heavy metal. So if you're a music fan and you want to listen to something about heavy metal, go for it. In the Abyss heavy metal podcast on Spotify, Audible, Google, and we're up on Linktree as well. And we've got some good bands coming on in the future, and hopefully we'll be at Bloodstock this year. I won't be there because I'll be working, but Bloodstock Music Festival in
Nice.
England. I think we might be involved in that. So we do
Yeah,
have links to quite a few record labels now. So yeah, it's starting to snowball. That again, going back to, I mean, I get to my Friday night and I've had a long week and I'm like, oh, I get to drink a beer and talk about thrash metal now for like 2 hours. It's a godsend.
It's great.
But yeah, just I think it's a great industry to work in. It's bizarre at times, it's absurd, but I love it. You know, it's it's those moments where you get, you know, the nuggets, the McNugget moments where you just focus in on something a student said and you run with it, and the kids are really into it and things like that. And that's what I love about it. And I think as well, on one hand, like regulatory bodies, we don't have an Ofsted to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
So we do have room to be mavericks sometimes and be like, you know, play things a bit fast and loose. We think there's an opening where you can go for it. Go, it's going to be a great lesson. I'm going to, you know, go off book and look at this emergent language and run with it. So yeah, I mean, it's not something that it's not an industry or a job that I would encourage people to avoid. But I think, thanks to people like you guys who are putting information out there about the whole industry and the wider range of other resources there are now compared to like when I got into this, I think people can definitely walk into this industry with their eyes open. But I would caution people to be aware of the snake oil salesman, because we do have a lot of them in this industry. You know, don't fall for the promises of you can earn $3,000 a month in this place, because my experience, you don't normally do. And if you're getting into this industry to make a load of money, you're not coming into the right industry.
No.
But you know, like, if you had told me in 1999 that I would have lived in South Korea, Vietnam, Spain, I would have spent a lot of time in Canada, I would have met my wife in Busan in 2000, I would have been like, what are you going on about? Like, no, you're this crazy person. So, you know, I've had a colorful 20 years. I've loved it, I've hated it, I've suffered through it, I've triumphed, you know. I've had setbacks, I've had victories, so you know it makes for a colourful life.
Indeed, and thank you for sharing that with us. Remember, folks, if you're listening, watching, we will have all the links below to the podcast that Anthony mentioned, along with any contact details to get in touch with him and follow up, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people reaching out saying, yeah, we feel you.
Yeah. I know. And if anyone gets in touch with me, I'm happy to answer any questions or provide any help, because it can be a lonely profession sometimes, and that's something we shouldn't overlook. And you know, there's no shame in asking for help. There's no shame in feeling burnt out or overburdened, or you know, it's not an easy job. It's not. It's like when the videos that you guys have looked at, I know, teaching English in films. It's not Robin Williams in Good Morning Vietnam. That's not the job we do. It's work. It's the job. And again, it's like I think the last thing I would say is, you are not going to Barcelona or Madrid or Southern Italy or Taiwan or places like this to have a fun time. You are going to work. That is your primary reason to go there. It's a job. If you take it seriously, you will get a lot from it, and you will have a better life for it, and you will progress up the chain, and you will get the respect of your students and your peers, and you will have a lot of personal and professional satisfaction from it. You know, if all you want to do is bum around somewhere for a year with a weekend TEFL, that's fine. But you and I don't do the same job.
Yeah,
very true. Okay, thank you. If you're looking for more information from myself, you can go to teamteacherchina.com. We've got a whole bunch of materials, PowerPoints that you can use instantly in the classroom. We've got a Team Teacher China YouTube channel where we have videos teaching you how to use those materials. Team Teacher English, where we put those materials into a video form for self-study. And Team Teacher Baby, where I take my experience as a teacher and put that into parenting.
And go to youtube.com/Professor Rich to see some English teaching. You can catch me weekly live streams on Oxford Online English YouTube channel. Oh, and also you can do a YouTube search for POG space UK, and you would get my alpha version of my new gaming channel, which actually just have some trial content on there at the moment. You can email us here at eltunderthecovers@gmail.com if you have anything you'd like to contribute to the show.
Smash that like button, share and subscribe.
And watch 100% of the video and don't click off. Thank you.
Bye.